Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tekking101 video. You know the video about the stuff, the One Piece related stuff. Yeah, that's right. But first we have a special announcement. I have just hit 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's right, 700,000. So I wanted to thank everybody for that. I'm going to be doing a live stream later this week, like I always do when I hit a big milestone. It's a big deal. Thank you so much. It's crazy just to think of how much, like, just from when Bleach ended, I hit like 100K right when Bleach ended, and then that was 6 years ago, and now we're like here at 700K. It just seems to move by so fast to me. But thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and considering that is the case, I'll tell you something secret about Barry, something you never even knew. I'm gonna turn him aside here, because, okay, all right, are you ready for this one? Okay, here's a big secret about Barry, okay. Barry is a brick. Like he's an actual brick. Like he's a piece of hardened clay that I drew a funny face on years ago. And yet somehow he's like the most popular character ever. Okay, is that good? All right, okay, cool. No, nothing, Barry. Yeah, nothing's going on here. Yeah, nothing. Okay. So anyway, yeah, what am I talking about today? All right, new arc in One Piece, I'm assuming. So we already had those few chapters, you know, the chapter with Blackbeard and Boa, and then we had the chapter just this past week, chapter 1060, which involved the Lulusia Kingdom and then the Ancient Weapon, maybe, possibly, and Eam was in that. Really intense. That chapter ended with the Straw Hats sailing into a climate zone of a new island. Apparently, it's a severely winter island because it's very, very cold. Nami was in a parka. She's freezing. Chopper's going to have a great time. Chopper, ironically, was wearing, like, a winter coat, which I feel it might just be because Chopper likes the design of the winter coat. He's literally a reindeer, although it might just be that cold. Like, they might be heading to the ice continent, for all we know. It doesn't really make much sense for that to be in the middle of the Grand Line, but who knows? It might be. I always assumed that the ice continent was, like, the geographical South Pole of the One Piece world, right? That's where, like, Don Chinzhou hid his treasure years ago and whatever with the dragon nail head that he had and Garp, you know, and everything. So I always assumed it was the North Pole or the South Pole, probably the South Pole, and you know, Buggy and Shanks always argued about which one was colder, so maybe that was the reference. But I guess it could just be like a really, really cold island, like one of the most severe winter islands in the entirety of the Grand Line. So we don't exactly know where they're going, but it is very cold. And as they were approaching the island, a giant warm eddy appeared out of the ocean. And the way it was described was it basically looked like a giant lollipop or an afro, as Brooke stated, coming out of the ocean, right? And so the Straw Hats were going to avoid it so they didn't get sucked in, but then with Luffy and Sanji's observation hockey, they sensed that there was someone trapped inside of the current, so Zoro sliced it in half. Chopper walked outside, and because he was wearing the Casa hat that Tama made for him, he got flung off the side of the Sunny like a giant sail. Luffy grabbed him, he got flung off as well, and then as that was happening, Jory Bonney just pops out of the current, and everyone's like, what? And then, like, that was the end of the chapter. So considering, you know, we already had the chapters where a lot of crazy stuff happens, as is the case with in-between story arcs, and now we're back with the Straw Hats again, I'm going to assume, and there's no break this week, I'm going to assume that the next chapter is going to kick off the new story arc. It's going to start with Luffy and Chopper rescuing Jory Bonney, and then getting back on the Sunny, and then they're going to talk a little bit. I think that's what the next chapter is mainly going to be about. Bonnie explaining who she is. Maybe we might find out what her devil fruit is called finally. She might reveal something about the Sorbet Kingdom. She might reveal stuff that happened at Reverie at Marijois. How did she get from Marijois all the way out into the middle of the New World, you know, inside of an ocean current? That's a little confusing. I feel like that's going to be mainly the discussion for the next chapter, and I can also see at the very end of the next chapter, the Straw Hats, like, as they're talking to Bonnie, like, Frankie is like, you know, well, I guess no, he's not the helmsman anymore. That would be Jinbei. Jinbei is driving the Sunny. He's driving the Sunny, just like, hey, everybody, that's great that you're having a conversation and you're learning about all this great lore, but land ho, we're coming up on a new island. Where should I park the Sunny, Luffy? I don't know, just go over there. It's like, all right, hold on, beep, 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 beep. He backs the Sunny into the parking space, and it's like, all right, put the e-brake on. All right, everybody get out. So I think that's how it's going to go, all right? So, yeah, before we talk about, specifically what island this might be, let's talk about Bonney, because I think she is going to be the most central figure of this whole thing. Also considering the fact the Straw Hats are looking for the last Road Poneglyph, and that was something else that was brought up in the last chapter, right after Luffy talked about his dream that sort of fired up all of the Straw Hats to get out there and make Luffy's dream a reality. And Frankie was like, okay, Captain, you want to find the One Piece and make your dream come true after you become King of the Pirates? Remember, the King of the Pirates is that's just step one. The Straw Hats are just working for step one so Luffy can become the King of the Pirates, and then he can achieve his real dream. So Frankie's like, yeah, super, let's find that last Road Poneglyph, let's get to Laugh Tale, let's make this happen, full steam ahead. And Robin was like, Frankie, you make it seem so easy. The last Road Poneglyph, has not been seen for a very, very long time, and we have absolutely no leads. And then it cuts to the scene with Sabo in the Lelucia Kingdom, and then it cuts back to the Straw Hats a few days later when they run into Bonney and they're approaching this winter island. So I'm going to deduce using some inductive reasoning, or is it deductive reasoning? Inductive, deductive, I don't know the difference. Using some form of reasoning, I'm going to assume that Bonney is going to play a critical role in this upcoming arc, which is also going to involve the fourth Road Poneglyph. Like, whatever island the Straw Hats are going to next may very well have the Road Poneglyph on it, or Bonney might know something about its location, and she might be able to point them in the right direction. Something of that nature, or maybe she's already seen it before, so she knows what it is. Maybe the last Road Poneglyph was in the Sorbet Kingdom, which she was apparently the Queen Dowager of for a while, you know what I mean? Probably not something like that, although the Sorbet Kingdom is going to be relevant because that ties back to Kuma and everything, okay? So, yeah, I'm not really sure how all the dots connect yet, but they're definitely going to be there. Bonney is one of the last members of the Worst Generation, or the Supernovas, that haven't really been, like a character backstory hasn't really happened yet. We haven't really focused on them. Definitely seems like Oda, for the last few story arcs, has been wanting to focus on a particular member of the Worst Generation of the Supernovas and explore them a little bit more in depth. It started with Law, at Punk Hazard. That's when we get reintroduced to Law because he was a big fan favorite. And then, of course, in Totland, we had Beiji and the Fire Tank crew. Then in Wano, we had pretty much everybody. I mean, Oda really, there was a lot of moving parts in Wano, and for that reason, I kind of wish that he might have moved around some of the other supernovas in other locations, because during Wano alone, we had Law, we had Luffy, we had Kid, we had Killer, we had Zoro, we had Drake, we had Hawkins. We had so many members of the of the Worst Generation, that maybe you could have not had Hawkins in Wano. You could have had his story arc be somewhere else, because there was a lot of stuff condensed into one arc. But the two remaining supernovas that we don't really know anything about, haven't really been focused on, were Bonney and Rouge. So with that being said, considering we also haven't focused on Rouge, let's just throw him into this arc too. Just round it all out. Why not, right? There's way too many, supernovas in the last arc, but having just two in this upcoming arc, like Bonney, and then they arrive at the island, and by the way, Bonney might not have anything to do with the island the Straw Hats are reaching. I mean, she might. Maybe she's like, I have to escape the world government, and I was heading to this winter island in the New World, and then the ship I was on got caught up in this warm eddy, and it capsized, and I got sucked into it, and she's the devil fruit user as well, so she can't do anything while she's in the eddy form or whatever, and now, it's like, oh, I have to get to this island, will you help me? That probably is going to be the case, because otherwise, I don't know, I don't really see any other issue for, Bonney allying with the Straw Hats. Her thing is always, every single time we see Bonney, she's always either, reading a newspaper, or she's crying, and she's like, I won't forgive them. No matter what, I won't forgive them. And it's always out of, like, he's, like, not specific on who she's referring to. Like, are you referring to the other pirates? Are you referring to the Yonko? Are you referring to the Gorosei? Are you referring to the world government in general? Are you referring to the Tenryubito in general? I'm not really sure, but she definitely has a connection with Kuma. Let's just cover that really briefly with Bonnie's character, the few things we do know about her. So, at Reverie, while she was in her old lady form, which may very well be her, like, original form, Bonnie has a devil fruit that allows her to manipulate her own age at will, as well as the ages of those around her. We don't exactly know that. We don't know the name of it, and we don't know how, like, the mechanism works. At Sabaody, she was on top of a building, and the Marines were, like, trying to bring her in, and we don't know what she did, if she just, like, snapped her fingers or opened up, like, a space kind of like room or something, but all of the Marines just either instantly turned into children or they turned into old men and they couldn't fight, and then she was just on top of the building just laughing at them, right? So this ability can clearly be activated on a large scale. I mean, it's going to be the same thing with Law's power, where, Law can use his room and he can move people around, but if they have really powerful hockey, he won't be able to affect them. So, kind of the same thing with that, like when they were fighting Big Mom and Kaido, and Kid was just like, Law, why don't you just teleport Big Mom away or something? And Law's like, I can't really move her at all. I mean, I can move her a little bit, but, she has too strong hockey. I can't do it, right? So probably something like that. Like, I don't think she would be able to walk up to, Kaido or whatever and just turn him into a little kid and, like, now we can win the fight, or anything like that, right? But it's a very powerful devil fruit, very devastatingly powerful devil fruit, actually, kind of broken. It can kind of wipe out a large group of people and in one fell swoop there. Yeah, so for that reason, also, we don't know how old she actually is. I'm going to assume that because she assumed her old lady form at the Reverie and she was identified as the Queen Dowager Connie of the Sorbet Kingdom, she was recognized. I'm going to assume that is her actual age, okay? So a Queen Dowager is basically a queen of a kingdom, but she's not the ruling queen of a kingdom, okay? And so the idea is, as a queen, you are the consort for the king, all right? But then you become the Queen Dowager when the king dies, and then you're still the queen, but you don't rule over the nation. The queen that rules would be the queen regnant, I think is what it's called. And so that means, like, okay, so that's actively ruling the country. In the case with a Queen Dowager, it would be like, let's say the queen and the king have a child, and that's the prince, and then the king dies, the line of succession would go to the prince. So the prince becomes the king, and the queen, or maybe the queen mother would be a better way of saying it, is still there, and she's still important, and she still has a role to play in the government and of the kingdom and everything like that, but she doesn't really have any real power, okay? That would be like passed to the firstborn male in the line, all right? So that's the idea. Now, with that being said, on her connection with Kuma, this can actually go one of two different ways. The way that I think makes the most sense, and considering how Bonney was so dedicated to, when she went into Marijois and she saw the state that Kuma was in as a PX0 and as a slave being used as a pack mule for the Tenryubito, she was very, very upset by that, and she was like, I'll never forgive them. I'm like, okay, great. And, that's like her catchphrase at this point. But anyway, yeah, so she sees that and she's like, I gotta help him in some way. I'm thinking that Kuma is Bonnie's child. I'm thinking how this went was that Connie married the king of the Sorbet Kingdom, and they ruled for a while, and then they had a child, they had Kuma, and then eventually Connie, or Bonnie's husband, died, the king died, and then Kuma became the next king. And, Connie was still there as the Queen Dowager, but Kuma was the one that was in complete control. Now, Kuma was also regarded as the tyrant at one point, so perhaps he was a very cruel king while he was the ruler of the Sorbet Kingdom. Kuma's story is something else that we don't really know a lot about. We know bits and pieces, but the more we find out about Kuma's past, it kind of just gets more confusing, where it's like, okay, he was a tyrant at one point, then he became a pirate, he became a warlord, okay, but then he was with the Revolutionary Army, which are for good, but then he also joined the world government to be turned into a cyborg, and then he also had his brain wiped, so it's like, we don't really know. I guess it's possible that, Kuma could have been, this horrible, oppressive tyrant in the Sorbet Kingdom. Maybe the revolutionaries arrived and threw him out of the nation, and then maybe Kuma saw the error of his ways and then joined up with Dragon for a while, and then he's like, well, then I can maybe join the warlords as like a deep cover operative or something like that. But that's getting more into Kuma's backstory here, talking about Bonney, all right? So, let's say, okay, Bonnie's husband died, and then Kuma was the new king, and then he got deposed, and so maybe Bonney for a while was the acting ruler of the nation because there was just nobody else. It was like after, like, let's say if Kuma if he never got married, if he never had kids, then it's just like Kuma is disposed, and now it's like, okay, Bonnie's husband's dead, who else is going to rule the nation? Maybe she did for a little while, but then maybe she ate the devil fruit and then decided after her youth was returned to her, she could actually get out there in the ocean and she could finally, seek out Kuma, find her son, and maybe bring him back to the kingdom. Maybe that's her mission. There's another way you could look at it where you could say that, like, maybe Bonney and Kuma, maybe they were the king and queen, because we know Kuma was the former king of the Sorbet Kingdom. That's already been confirmed, I'm pretty sure. So it might have been a situation where maybe Kuma and Bonney were, married, and then something happened where Kuma died. Now, he didn't actually die, but maybe he faked his death, or the Sorbet Kingdom believed him to be dead, and so that's when he left to go join the Revolutionary Army in some way. Although that wouldn't really work so much because he became a warlord and he was well known throughout the entire world. Although it might have been a symbolic thing, like, our king has abandoned the Sorbet Kingdom. King Kuma, he left to go out to sea to be a pirate or a revolutionary. He's essentially dead to us. And so therefore maybe that's how Connie would have received the Queen Dowager status, okay? But that's going out on a little bit more of a limb there. I'm going to go along with the idea that Connie was the queen with her husband died, they had a kid together, and that kid was Kuma, all right? And then at some point he left, a lot of stuff crazy happened with him. Bonney then ate the devil fruit, probably in her older age, but then she had the ability to return to the prime of her youth, and then she left the island to go seek out her child and try to find him and bring him back, okay? Tell him that she loves him, that's kind of the situation, okay. So last time we saw her, though, she was at Reverie, and we didn't really see what, like she was in the city, she snuck into the Celestial Dragon City, and then she was an old lady, and she turned back into, like, the form of, like, in her 20s that we normally see her in, like the prime of her youth. She turned back into that form, and then we didn't see anything else that happened with her. We don't know what else happened with her. We don't know if she met up with the Revolutionary Army. We don't know if she, like, attacked some of the Tenryubito. We don't know if she played a role in rescuing Kuma, or if she even knows that Kuma has been rescued. However, given the fact that Kuma does have the ability of the Pawpaw Fruit, that would actually probably make a lot of sense on how she ended up where she ended up. Okay, so it might have been a situation, it might have been how a lot of the Revolutionary Army managed to escape. Maybe because Kuma, as a robot, he still has the power of the Pawpaw Fruit, it's just he's a robot and he has no ability to think for himself, okay? However, as was the case with Dragon, as we saw, Kuma still listens to whatever orders he's given. I guess the Tenryubito just programmed it, or maybe Vegapunk programmed it in as, like, whoever issues Kuma an order, he has to obey. And the Tenryubito didn't know about this because he was under their control. He was in Marijois, he was in the city of the Celestial Dragons. It just was never an issue like, oh, well, we don't have to worry about, like, what's going to happen. The Revolutionary Army is going to break in and issue an order to Kuma that he has to obey. That'll never happen, right? They just use Kuma as their own little plaything, right? Well, what if the situation happened where the revolutionaries break in, they get Kuma back, and they issue Kuma an order like, Kuma, you have to send everybody away. Get us all out of here. Send us back to these islands or whatever. And Kuma's like, yes, I will obey. Boop, and then sends them flying, okay? And that's how they escaped Reverie. That's how they got away from Marijois. So that's a pretty fair way of understanding how Jewelry Bonney escaped that. Because even if she managed to escape out of, like, the immediate threat of, like, Fujitora and Aramaki attacking, she still has to escape the Red Line. She still has to get down, from the Red Port back down into sea level. And then it's still several weeks traveling from the Red Line to where they're at right now. A lot of time has passed since the Reverie, at least a few weeks, I think. So it's not impossible, but I think it makes a lot more sense that she got sent flying by Kuma, and actually might have gotten sent flying by Kuma toward that winter island specifically, not just sending her flying off to a random point in the ocean. It's like, I will send I will send Sabo to Lelucia. Maybe Sabo requested that. Maybe Sabo was like, I want to be sent to the Lelucia Kingdom. And then maybe the other commanders like, well, with the case with like Karasu, he can fly on his own. Lindbergh has a jetpack, but he probably can't like fly anywhere he wants. He probably can't fly like all the way around the world with that thing. So maybe Lindbergh got sent flying. Morley might have gotten sent flying. Back to Kamabaka where they're at right now. Might have been a situation with that where Kuma's with them, right? So like Kuma, Morley, Karasu, and Lindbergh might have all got sent flying together. Sabo asked specifically to be sent to Lelucia, and maybe Bonney requested to be sent to this island, this winter island, or maybe, Kuma thought, or I guess not Kuma thought because he can't anymore, but maybe Sabo came up with the idea like, oh, Bonney, you need to go here, or something like that. And then she got sent flying, and then this giant eddy came out of the ocean and it sort of disrupted the attack. Although that's not really a case either, because we've seen before with Kuma's, when he's sending people flying, the bubble sort of, it breaks through everything. It even breaks through mountains in order to arrive at the location that he specified. So it might have been maybe a situation where she got sent flying off. Maybe she did get sent flying into the middle of the ocean. Maybe they didn't have time to plan on where she was going to be sent, and maybe the coordinates were off by a little bit, and that's how she ended up where she ended up. Right? So that's the situation there. Oh, there's also been a thing, and this is going back to Devil Fruit weaknesses, because Bonney was in the current, because she was in the water, and she was in her kid form, and because Devil Fruit users can't use their powers in water, people think that that must mean that is her original form as the kid, not like the old lady. That's not how Devil Fruit power weaknesses work in water. It's sort of like when Chopper got knocked into the water after he was in Monster Point. If that's the way it worked, then he should have turned back into his walk point, into his regular reindeer form, and he didn't. Chopper in his Monster Point got knocked into the water by Frankie at Ennie's Lobby, and he turned back into his brain point. Okay, so that's not really how Devil Fruit powers work. When a Devil Fruit user gets submerged in water high enough, like completely submerged like Bonney did, they get weak and they basically pass out, and if you can't breathe underwater, like if you're not a fishman or a merfolk, you will end up dying eventually, right? So in this situation, but it doesn't turn off a Devil Fruit power. So what it really means to me is that whatever happened where Bonney got, into this giant warm eddy current, she was already in her kid form, and then, maybe the boat capsized and she got into the water, and then it turned into the giant current, and then she couldn't turn into another form, she couldn't do anything else, she was like losing consciousness, and she couldn't, she couldn't really use her powers, but it's not really how it works. Devil Fruits are a little weird. I know Chopper is a zone, and Connie or Bonney has a paramecia, but that's the way I looked at it anyway. It just makes way more sense in the plot of the story for her Connie persona, her old lady form, to be her original, to me anyway. So that's I think that's her real true age. So there's that. Now I think that's going to provide a lot of insight onto what's going on also with Vivi. Bonney might know a lot about that. She also might explain what happened with the Revolutionaries. I think Bonney did meet up with the Revolutionaries if Kuma really was the one that sent her flying. Maybe it was like some kind of weird moment where Kuma, as the PX-0, sees Bonney, and Kuma is like, pirate jewelry Bonney must capture, and then Bonnie's like, no, Kuma, I'm your mom, and then Kuma's like, mom, it's just like he's like glitching out or whatever. It's just like, I must escape, and then sends her flying or something like that. Might have been a situation like that, I don't know. Now, as for the island that they are heading, I don't really know. I mean, it could be Elbaf, because Elbaf did have a wintry climate around it. It's certainly not Sphinx Island, which was unfortunate because the maps all lined up. Geography was everything, and it turned out not to be the case. So, whatever. It's not Sphinx. It's not Hachinosu. The only island it has a chance of being is Elbaf, which I shouldn't complain because I've wanted to go to Elbaf forever. When Big Mom was dropped off, when they did Operation Beached Whale and dropped Big Mom off, on Elbaf, her biological biological parents did way like 60 something years ago. We saw it was very cold around the island. Also, the fact that Nami said, like, oh, it's a winter island, it's like severely cold. Maybe it's not just a regular winter, it's a giant winter. You know, it's like even the weather is more intense on Elbath because everything is bigger in Elbath. It's like Texas, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead with that. Let's go ahead and say it's Elbath because why not? We had to go there anyway. The Giants are not allied with the world government in the same way that a lot of other nations are. Maybe they do have the last Road Poneglyph. Like, if there's going to be any location, like, in my opinion, the fourth Road Poneglyph is either going to be in the hands of a really powerful character like Shanks, or it's going to be carefully guarded by, like, the Giants or, you know, somebody like the royalty on Elbath or something like that. Or it's just going to be lost, as in, like, it's at the bottom of the ocean or it's in a cave somewhere, you know, and it just got, you know, sent there. We know it was originally at Fishman Island, and then something happened and got moved. Maybe Whitebeard moved it, and he put it on Elbath for safekeeping, or he gave it to her. Maybe Shanks has it now or something like that. But it being on Elbath makes a lot of sense. Now, the only thing is, like, what's the connection between Bonney and Elbath, if that's the situation? Or if she got sent there, if that really is Elbath, why would Kuma send her there? Or why would she want to go to Elbath? Why would the idea for Bonney to be sent to Elbath? Because I think that is going to be the case. Like, Bonnie's going to be saved by the Straw Hats, and she's going to be like, I have to get to that island. I need you to take me there. And they're like, okay, well, what's that island? Like, if it actually is Elbath, then there has to be a reason for it. It's possible that Kuma is not big enough, I think, to be a giant, but sort of in the same vein. Well, he might be, actually. Kuma and Moria are about the same height, but I don't think they're giant size, because Big Mom is also really big. Big Mom is like 8 meters tall, but she is not, like 12 meters is like the shortest giant. I don't think Kuma and Moria and Big Mom were that big. I know for a fact Big Mom wasn't. Whitebeard also was not nearly as tall as either of them. But the whole idea, I think the reason why you have a lot of these large characters in One Piece, like Whitebeard, Moria, Kuma, Big Mom, that are Kaido, that are clearly taller and larger than most regular humans, is because giants exist, and giant blood gets mixed with human blood throughout the years, and that's how you end up with, like, you know, like Whitebeard's like great-grandpappy might have been a giant, you know, something like that. Same thing with Moria. Well, Moria might be something different because he's like an onion demon devil human or something, right? But in the case with Kuma, it's definitely possible. Like, Kuma's dad could have been a giant. Oh wait, holy crap, this does work. What if Bonnie's husband, the original king of the Sorbet Kingdom, what if Bonnie's husband was a giant? Okay, so Bonney fell in love with a giant, and then they had Kuma, who is half giant, and then Bonnie's husband died, so she's the Queen Dowager, and then, you know, Kuma becomes the next king, who's referred to as the Tyrant. And if you have, like, a giant king who's really cruel and oppressive, calling him a tyrant, like, tyrant, correct me if I'm wrong, I might have to look it up in the dictionary. Tyrant can mean, like, you know, you're very cruel, but can't it also denote, like, somebody very large? Hold on, let me look this up really quick. I don't know why, I might be mixing this up. Hold on, I gotta check a dictionary definition really quick. Hold on. All right, what do we got here? Tyrant definition. All right, noun, tyrant, a cruel and oppressive ruler, a person exercising power or control in a cruel, unreasonable, or arbitrary way. Yeah, okay, I guess there's really no reference. Like, what's the original? Yeah, the original Greek. I don't know. I don't think there's any direct reference to a tyrant being, like, a giant, like, an oppressive, like, maybe you could make the reference, like, you're like an ogre, you know, because you're a tyrant, you're a mean ruler person, so you're like, oh, that person's like an ogre, or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. I just thought there was a connection there. But that could actually be the case. That might actually work, okay? And then maybe that's why she's going to Elbath. You know, maybe Bonnie's ex-husband, or, you know, her deceased husband might have been, like, maybe a part of the giant royal family, might have been part of, like, you know, maybe like Loki's brother or something like that, or like maybe Loki's uncle or something. I don't know. I don't know how that would work, but that is a connection. It's a tenuous connection, granted, but there is a connection there. Anyway, I think that's for this video. I think I've covered a lot of stuff there. Let me know down below on what you think about all this, how Bonney is going to connect back to the Road Poneglyph or the Load Poneglyph, connection to the Revolutionary Army, connection to Elbaf, if that is where they're going. If that isn't where they're going, where are they going? Maybe it is the ice continent. Maybe it is somewhere else. Who knows? You know, and oh, by the way, if it is the ice continent, Whitey Bay might also be there too, but I don't think it's the ice continent. I'm kind of leaning on Elbaf now because we sort of have to get this moving. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching the video, everybody. And now moving on to everybody's favorite segment. That's right, Monkey Facts.
You got the funky monkey facts with Tekking101.
So this is a good one on Monkey Facts today. When I was getting images for Monkey Facts, okay, there was one monkey that kept popping up that I was like, I gotta talk about this thing at some point, right? And that was this monkey right there. The monkey with the giant nose. And I'm like, all right, there's a story here. What's going on? This is known as the proboscis monkey, or very apt, the long-nosed monkey. They are an old world monkey that are indigenous to Southeast Asia on the island of Borneo. In Indonesia, so this general region here. They also remind me a lot of Tengu, so I thought for a moment, like, are these monkey, like, they never reached Japan, but if these monkey were ever, like, indigenous to the island of Japan, they would probably be a basis for, like, the Tengu, you know, yokai or something like that. So yeah, they are monkeys that have giant noses, sometimes, like, more than 4 inches long, that are even longer than, like, they even go down below their mouths. The males have longer noses than the females. Here's, like, a comparison between, you know, there's a female and this is a male of the species. The whole point of the nose, what is generally believed to be the point of it, is a mating call sort of situation. So the males that have the larger noses create a louder call, louder reverberations, which, you know, helps out in the mating ritual, and that's why the females also don't have, like, such a long nose in compared to the male. And it's like the female was like, oh, that male over there has a longer nose, and it's a louder reverberation, a louder noise, so that's for the courtship or whatever. They have large pot bellies, and also they have kind of webbed toes, so I guess they can swim rather well as well. But yeah, I mean, like, with most interesting, like, characteristics in the animal kingdom, like, why does that monkey have a giant Tengu nose? Probably the reason comes back to it, like, it helps them feed, or it helps them survive, or as a connection with that, it helps, you know, with the mating ritual. So there you go, that's the reason. But they're really rather fascinating. One of the most fascinating monkeys in the entire world, so had to talk about the proboscis monkey, the Tengu monkey. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out. Once again, thanks for the 700K. Be making a live stream about this later this week. And so, yeah, I also have another sort of project lined up on the vlog channel that I might start today, actually. So, you know, pay attention to that. Go and check out the vlog channel, Tekking101, and we'll see where that goes. It'll be like a question and answer kind of series. Thanks for watching. Tekking signing out. Later.